While many parts of Texas are stuck in a brutal drought and some reportedly told to cut back on showers, AI data centers like Microsoft's massive Stargate campus in Abilene are guzzling 463 million gallons of water in just 2 years to cool their servers. That's enough for tens of thousands of homes, and it's only getting worse. Projections say these centers could use 49 billion gallons in 2025, hitting 399 billion by 2030, nearly 7% of the state's water. With no regulations to curb this and locals facing strict water limits, it's a stark contrast. Everyday Texans conserve while tech giants drain our scarce resources unchecked. This, of course, is not isolated to Texas, but it's in the news because of Microsoft's Stargate. Doc Pete Chambers is running for governor of Texas. He has a few things to say about this. He joins us now. Doc Pete Chambers, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you coming on.
Good to be here, Maria.
I am very interested in what you have to say about this topic because it seems that a lot of leaders or even prospective leaders aren't really addressing this issue, which is a lot of people are concerned following this story that came out about the new AI data center in Abilene, which is already a very drought-affected area, essentially soaking up all of this water that the people of Texas need so desperately. And we have a lot of drought-affected areas in Texas. So what do you make of all of this, Doc Pete Chambers?
Right. So this came to my attention last week. We discussed it on the backside, and this is a concern. Texas draws in industry, right? It typically does that. The 8th largest economy in the world. With the Microsoft data center, its technology is outrunning its headlights, if you will, because we have to look at the second and third order effects of that. So with 463 million gallons of water used in 2023 to 2024 in Texas alone, this water cools those servers, and it's an evaporative process. So you can't reclaim that water. There are ways to do that. That's what we've got to look at. You know, if I'm going to be the governor here pretty soon, what I would do is set up a task force in order to avoid those second and third order deleterious effects upon the citizens of Texas. They shouldn't have water meters attached to their house and worry about where their water is going to come from, especially in an area like Abilene. We've got to consider the agriculture industry, the cattle industry. We've got to sit down with the Texas and Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association to say they're combined to say, hey, how much water do you need and how can we then best do that? We can't just jump out there and just say we're going to put not just one data center. Microsoft has got the one, but many data centers. And we're talking about by 2030, the intent is to have billions of gallons of water usage, which would take up over 7, possibly 10% of the water uses of Texas alone, without considering other ways to reclaim that water.
Right, and we will talk about that. My understanding is that right now we've got 49 billion gallons projected by 2030, which is nearly 7% of the state's water usage. But the problem that I found was that the 2027 state water plan does not actually account for data centers. So those projections of 49 billion aren't really comprehensive because we actually haven't accounted for the data centers as of 2027. And with more of these planned, and you're right, we have Microsoft in Abilene, but more of these are planned, there will be many effects that haven't been considered here. Now, you mentioned the processes of cooling, the evaporative cooling, for example.
The servers.
Right. Well, I'm assuming that there are other ways. Obviously, we don't want to completely stop technology and progress, and that's in line with what the federal government wants. But there have to be other ways that we're looking at to not affect the residents. What are your thoughts on this?
Right. So there are other ways to do this. I mean, desalination has been a process for years that is used, but it has to take place in a coastal area. The saline, the salt that's in the salt water is along the Gulf of Mexico, right? Or the Gulf of America, maybe the Gulf of Texas in my book. But that's the things that we have to look at. There are other ways to do that. There is also another way to capture the evaporation process to then recycle that. If you must put it in a place like Abilene, it costs them more money. Understand this as well, that these decisions were made without letting local municipalities know. So if the local government doesn't know about this, how do they prepare for this oncoming welcoming, if you will, of a new large technologic advancement, unbeknownst to them, which will be deleterious to those citizens. And so we've got to balance this out. And that requires the thinking at the top, if it's the state that's bringing this in, to then talk to those leaders and say, okay, what are you willing to do, or what are we willing to do in order to protect you the most? Not just bring it in and say, okay, suck it up, Buttercup, because that ain't the answer.
Right, and I'm hearing some arguments in rebuttal to this saying, well, the agriculture industry uses up to 50% of the state's water. Maybe we should be looking at them conserving more rather than...
Yeah, and they feed us.
Well, that's that was my next point.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. They feed us. Talk to us about what would happen if this negatively impacted the agriculture industry.
Absolutely. If you can't water, obviously we call it, Texas gets, and it should not be, but it gets called sometimes a flyover state. You fly over Texas and look at the circular patterns that are used to irrigate these fields throughout all the flyover states, if you will. When you decrease the ability to do that, then we have to rely on other sources for our food out of the ground. We have to rely for other sources to irrigate our fields in order to feed our cat, to give cattle water. I mean, the cattle industry is huge in Texas. So we cannot just jump on that and think it's not going to have that effect down the line. And we don't want to bring in cattle from other places. Right now, we're concerned about the cattle coming in from Texas with screwworm and other forms of TB that are resistant to treatment.
From Mexico, you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to quarantine cattle. If you put them on a ranch in Texas, then the contiguous ranches by law will be quarantined as well if they fall within a certain space of that fence line. So that ends up being a rate limiting step to getting cattle out. We saw that happen during the COVID mission when they shut down the meat packing plants in Texas. We don't want to do that. The beef prices went through the roof. That's what will happen again, but we'll get a lesser quality product. Texas beef is the finest beef in the nation. We have to stay there.
Right. I mean, it's about preserving everything. We're supposed to be seeing states thriving. We're supposed to be seeing the country thriving and preserving the things that states are really known for and preserving their industry. So there needs to be a compromise here. I'm interested in your thoughts, Doc Pete Chambers. The federal government is very, very keen on more AI. A lot of people are concerned about this. But I'm of the opinion that the states need to be able to sort out their own problems without the interference from the federal government. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Absolutely. This to me goes to a states' rights versus federal, intrusion, if you will, issue. There are certain enumerated powers that are assigned to the federal government in the U.S. Constitution, and we understand that. But this is one of those things where let states do what states do, right? Because we know our location, we know our areas. Texas is like 8 different countries if you looked at it, as far as just different environments and atmospherics of the sections of Texas. We know how to best make that decision for us. AI is a tool, all right? So was wind power. So was, solar power. But after we went through the Snowmageddon incident, I believe several years back, I can't remember what year it was now, it's been a while, but we saw that those things did not work, right? They just didn't work. The power grid went down in Texas, and Texas were on their own for a period of time, and people died because of it. So we don't want to make decisions that could ultimately result in because of some new thing that's coming out. And AI has been around for a while, but it is not the answer to everything. It doesn't feed us, right? So we just go back to that model. It doesn't feed us. We don't want to take away from the thing that does in order to have what? I can write a speech a little bit better, quicker, right? It's not what is going to push this whole thing forward without harming society.
Right. So what I'm hearing, and I'm just surprised that we haven't had any leaders discussing the possible effects or any potential leaders discussing the possible effects. You are the first that I've heard speak up about this. So what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're absolutely not opposed to advancement. It's not just about keeping things as is and shutting out the initiatives of the federal government. It's about actually finding solutions, addressing these problems, and saying we're willing to work with the federal government, with other states, with the local people, as long as it doesn't actually harm those people. We need other solutions for the cooling, perhaps. We need, I don't know whether it's going to be refrigeration. Obviously, that's going to cost them more, but you can't go to an area that's already drought-ridden and demand that all of their water, essentially.
Right, and there was a pretty exquisite Meadows Center study on this, and it specifically lined out everything that we just talked about. And that's the kind of intelligence and common sense that we need to put input into this discourse, into this discussion, because otherwise, if there's something that could be gained out there that only a lobbyist would gain in this, that's not the way that Texas should be run. It's not about the lobbyists making more money or any special interest. This is about what's best for the state. And that's the common sense approach. It has nothing to do with party line. It's the bell curve of common sense that we're missing out on when we allow those other factors to come in and make decisions for us before we've done a true study as feasibility, safety, sustainment. You know, sustainability is a thing that's used by woke people, but it truly has to be sustained. Sustenance must be sustained.
Of course. And this study that you're referencing, where was it from? Sorry.
Meadows Institute.
And they said, what was the solution?
Yeah,
proposed?
it was a Meadows Institute study on the water environmental at Texas State University. The executive director, Robert Mace, I read an article on it. It is eloquently written, and it discusses this very thing that we're in. So look that up. You can put that out for your folks. That would really be a great way to school yourself on what the common sense approach to this is.
Right. Well, Doc Pete Chambers, we're very, very grateful for you. I want to encourage people to follow you on X at Doc Pete Chambers. That's at Doc Pete Chambers. What we need right now with seemingly the grip of a lot of things slipping out of the people's hands, we really need people that are wanting to represent the people and address these issues front on. And I think you're being very reasonable about it. I want to direct everyone to your website as well at docpetechambers.org, docpetechambers.org. It's up on your screen right now. Doc Pete Chambers for Texas Governor. There are a number of different issues I'd like to discuss with you, and I'm sure we'll have you back on in due time. But for now, we really wanted to address this because it stirred up a lot of people. A lot of people are very concerned about this, so we're really grateful that you're addressing this front on. Doc Pete Chambers, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you.